Do you like it? How about this one?
Thanks for tuning in to an all-new episode of Game On. Today is Friday, June 24th, and I'm your host, Trueflight. We got a good show for you tonight. We got the part of the development team for Soul Last Days of a Star from Elephant Laboratories here, and we're going to get to them in just a minute. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, if you have any games or topics you'd like us to cover, or just want to get in touch with me, you can do so in a few ways. You can follow me on Twitter. It's Trueflight_EQ2, where I post my thoughts and updates on the show. You can also find me on Board Game Geek under the username Ender02. And you can always check out my YouTube channel where I post game reviews, gameplay videos, podcast episodes, and more. And that's youtube.com/user/Trueflights with an S. I got a lot of stuff to talk about right now. First thing, I guess we'll do what we always do and talk about what I'm playing right now. Since our last show, I've been playing a lot of The Crew. Got a new wheel recently, so I've been trying to get the hang of driving with that. I also finally got in my copy of Centauri Saga, so we've been playing that quite a bit. A few games here at home, a few games down at the shop to try to get the hang of it. The rule book is terrible the way it's laid out. They're supposed to be printing up another one, so hopefully that takes care of the problems. But the game itself is kind of fun. Just needs a someone who knows how to play to explain it to you. Also did a learn to play demo for Star Trek Attack Wing down at the local shop last weekend. Had a bunch of new people come in. We played some demo games with single ship fleets, some versus games, some scenario games, just to get everybody familiar with the rules. A lot of people showed up, had a quite a bit of fun running it, so that was always nice to have new people coming into that. I also got a chance to check out a game by a local game designer from a company called Dream Games. It's called Meta Checkers. It's kind of a cross between checkers and chess, where you set up like a checkerboard and you're using a die to see what chess pieces your pieces move as. It's an interesting concept. Had a lot of fun testing that out. Can't wait to see where that goes from there. Also, big news since our last show was the Origins game show. Tons of information coming out of there. Where to start on that? Ceti was there, Planetary Crisis. It's one I've been talking about a lot on the show. Hopefully, we're going to have them on as a guest here soon. Everything on their production's been going right on schedule. They had a really cool prototype there that was almost a completed product, had some 3D printed models instead of the injection molded ones. But other than that, everything was pretty much what it's going to be. And sadly, I didn't get to go to Origins, so I didn't get to actually see it. But it, from the pictures and everything, looked really cool. I guess a lot of people enjoyed playing it, so that's good to hear. Cool Mini or Not was there, showing off the Arcadia Quest Inferno, which pretty much looks completed from what they had on display. Excited to get that game. It's been delayed till October, unfortunately, due to some issues with the Dragon expansions. So hopefully we'll get that around here soon. But from what they had, it looked pretty solid and pretty completed already. So it shouldn't be much work left to do on that. Robots Battle for the Coal Heart. I did not get the name of the designer for that one, but it's a very interesting game where you have to build up this robot from different parts and use it to fight against other players' bots. And the last one standing is the winner. And each one has different bonuses based on what base chassis you started with and what upgrades you put on it throughout the game. Kind of an interesting one there. Simon's Cat, the card game's coming out. It's based on the popular YouTube series. I think he writes, I know he has a couple books. I'm not sure if it's a comic book or not, but I know there's a book out. And it's a pretty simple card game. Kind of looks like Uno in a way, but has art and themes from the Simon's Cat series. Very interesting, fun little game. Catacombs and Castles, another one that caught my eye. It's based on Catacombs 3rd edition. If you're not familiar with it, it's a dexterity-based flicking game where you have these little discs that you flick around the board to try to do different things. This one's got a few new additions and upgrades to that game. Mostly the scenery isn't actually attached to the board now. It can move around, and a lot of the attacks and things are range based. So instead of flicking your actual character discs, you have like a fireball type thing you can flick around, things like that. Definitely has some interesting add-ons to that game. I'm curious to see how that turns out. That one's still on Kickstarter. It actually ends here in a couple days. We Come in Peace is another interesting one. It's a dice-based game where you're trying to send ships to attack your opponents while defending your own planet from being destroyed. Uses a interesting damage grid type thing where your planet gets damaged from different angles. Kind of reminds me of something like Castle Panic in that respect, but it's all done through dice. The dice determine where you attack and things like that. And you can choose to use some of your dice to block their attacks and things. Kind of an interesting concept. I'm curious to learn more about that one. I definitely want to give that one a try. Adrenaline was another one that seemed interesting. Kind of reminds me of Fragged. It's a really old game. It's been around for years. My friends used to love it. But it's kind of a first or third person shooter type game where you have to keep track of your ammo management as well as picking up other weapons and things throughout the course of the game. Yokohama seems to be a hugely popular one. Everybody was ranting over it from the show. It's a Japanese game about running a business in the village of Yokohama, and it was really popular amongst everybody. But when you actually see it on the show, it looks amazingly overcomplicated, and everybody said it was easy to grasp. Just didn't interest me that much, but I may have to try it out just to see what everybody else is so into it about. There was a Princess Bride game, I Hate to Kill You. It's a dice-based game with the added twist of being able to play characters from the movie, and you use various cards to change the outcome of your dice, and it's basically set up as a swashbuckling duel. Kind of interesting to see games still coming out for such an old movie, even though it is a great one. JurassAttack is one that's been on and off. I've seen it a couple times from early reviewers and things. It's basically these giant oversized cards with giant dinosaurs on them, and you use them to battle out and see who's the last surviving. You can send them out in herds and whatnot, and it's an interesting concept. You play the cards face down, so nobody knows what the other people played until you flip them over. So you're not sure if they played one really big dinosaur or a bunch of little ones. You just know how many cards they played. Then you have eggs that you can toss in there as well. And if you win when you play your eggs, you get to keep them as extra victory points. All sorts of interesting things there. I love the fact that the cards are huge too. Guilds of London was another big one. It's an interesting area control game where you're trying to control the various guilds who run the city and be the one with the most influence over them at the end. Everybody ends up with a secret goal or multiple goals, depending on other cards that let you draw them throughout the game. And you use card play to move around your tokens. The only complaint I see about this one is it uses almost exclusively images and icons to represent all of the cards in the game. So there's a big reference sheet with all the various different icons on it to explain what is what. And it makes the game great for multi languages because they don't have to translate every single individual card. They just translate the rules and that's it. But for teaching and learning the game, having no text on those cards makes it very difficult. And you have to learn what each little symbol, two little guys with an arrow next to them means this versus three little guys with an arrow pointing the other way means something completely different, and so on. So it looks like a good game. Just got to get past that initial learning curve. Mystic Vale was another good one that caught my eye. It's a deck building game with some amazing artwork, and you're trying to cleanse a curse on the land without falling to decay. You play as a druid, and you use the various cards to build up abilities, and you have to watch how much power you're expending to play the cards. Though it's really interesting concept. A lot of people were interested in that one. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on that. IMHOTEP was another popular one. There was a game a few years back with the same name, but as far as I know, this is completely different. In this one, you're trying to become the best known architect in Egypt by finding and moving around big stones to different locations in order to build monuments and try to screw over your opponents so that you can do it before they do. Rocky Road a la Mode was another interesting one. It's a comical take on being a ice cream truck delivery driver, and you have to. It's a pickup and delivery game, and you have to go around, get to know your customers, and be able to supply them with what they want to keep them happy in various locations around this little track. And it's an interesting concept that whoever's in the last place, it's their turn, and they get to keep going until they're no longer in last place. And then whoever's in last at that point gets to take their turn. So it's a really interesting concept there, but definitely a fun little like diversion game. Next, we have Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. It's an interesting take on a 4X game where you fight in the battles between humans, orcs, dwarves, and elves. As the game progresses, your units become more powerful and you gain access to new technology to help you take over land, air, and sea. Kind of an interesting concept. I like the fantasy theme on there and interested to see more about that one. Next, we have Dead Last. It's an interesting player elimination game where everybody's kind of collaborating with each other by any means necessary to try to eliminate one of the players each round. And you're allowed to do anything you want. You could do nods, pointing, whatever. But if you tip off the person that's going to be eliminated, they have a chance to ambush you and they can kill you instead. So it's a really interesting take on the game. And I think that one's going to be great, especially in large groups. The only downside is because someone gets eliminated every turn, there could be a lot of downtime if you're the first person to get eliminated in a big group. But it seems like an interesting concept and a take on that type of games. Then we have Hope. It's an interesting sci-fi themed game where you're flying your ship to distant galaxies in order to restore life to the universe. Has some interesting components, really cool looking ship models. It's a 4X game, but they have a element that someone in there can be a trader. So that looks interesting as well. There's a ton of other games. Those were just the ones that personally caught my eye. And I'm sure people are going to rant that I missed something somewhere. But yeah, there's lots and lots of games. So definitely check out. BGG has a really nice roundup of all of the different games that were on display at Origins. And you can check that out and see what's there. Onto our Kickstarter watches. Not too many this time around. A lot of them have finished up. Most of the ones I was backing already wrapped up. There's a couple I'm interested in, but short on funds at the moment. So not trying to get into any new ones. One that really caught my eye is called Earthos. It was actually recently canceled. It's being rescheduled for September 12th. It's a strategy-based space game where you're commanding one of 6 alien races and trying to expand your species' reach throughout the universe. And it's got these giant hex tiles for different territories and systems. There's planets that rotate with moons, and you have these little fleets that you're basically moving around to try to destroy your enemies and take over their territories. Lots of interesting concepts there. I think the rules do need a little bit of work, and that's part of why it got canceled and postponed. But it definitely has a lot of potential there, and I'm definitely going to be watching for that to make its return. Central Cities Heroes is another one that caught my eye. This one I so tempted to back. It's actually a reboot. It was on before and didn't fund, I think, but it only has a couple days left, so I'm probably not going to make it on board that one. But it's a cooperative tabletop game where each of the players controls a superhero, and they all have different powers. And you're working together to battle minions, complete missions, rescue people, recruit other heroes, and so on. And in the end, you battle the final boss in a big showdown. It's just a really interesting, fun superhero themed game, and I'll be looking at it more. But unfortunately, like I said, I don't think I'm going to be able to hit the Kickstarter for that one. But you can check it out. It has a couple days left. Next, we have Massive Darkness. It's another cool mini or not game. This one's a huge dungeon crawler. It's 1 to 6 players. Doesn't require a game master. And it has a very interesting concept where the heroes are fighting through the dungeon, encountering the monsters, uses all sorts of mechanics. There's dark areas where you can stealth and sneak around and things like that. The models are outstanding, which is to be expected from Cool Mini or not. They're not the normal chibi stuff that we've been seeing with Masmora and Arcadia and all that stuff. They're really, really cool minis. Unfortunately, they also push the price point of the game way up. I think the base pledge for just the game is $120. Might be worth it for you if you're really into that kind of game. It does look outstanding. The price kind of pushed me away from it for now, but it's something I might look into at a later time. Definitely some of the really cool monsters, the demons and things are really cool. So curious to see more about that as time goes on and how that game turns out. Next, we have Planetarium, and I say it that way because of South Park. It's a game where you're going around basically creating star systems. There's a newborn star, and it's got matter that's colliding and making solar systems, and it's very interesting. And the board of it's pretty cool looking. That one's got about 2 weeks left to go. I bought a ton of space games recently, so I'm kind of iffy on backing that one, but it's another one of them that even if I wanted to right now, I'm kind of short on funds, but it may be worth looking into. And last, we have Hope, which is a co-op 2 to 4 player game where you're trying to save the universe by spreading and restoring life. And it has that little added aspect that one of the players may be a traitor. And it's an interesting co-op game. Definitely keep an eye on that one. And it has just over 2 weeks left. So check that one out. That about wraps it up for our roundup here. We're going to get right to our interview and talk to our guests. Well, I'm here with Jodi Sweetman and Ryan Spangler, part of the developers for Soul Last Days of a Star. Would you guys introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hi, I'm Ryan.
Hi, I'm Jodi.
And right off the bat, I got to ask you something that I ask all of our guests. Well, what kind of games are you guys currently playing? I'm sure Soul, but what else?
Oh yeah, play all kinds of stuff. Really, I've gotten really into the. I swing back and forth. I'm back on like a heavy, long, epic game swing. So like I just played War of the Ring with my friend, and stuff like High Frontier, and we just got Falling Sky, and
A couple of rounds of Maria lately.
yeah, I've been diving deep into Maria, which is fun, and then we just played Forbidden Stars, so like a lot of like high interactivity, like dense, almost like war games. I don't know what's happened lately, and now I just want to play long, heavy war games. I don't know.
Right. And I am not on that same swing. But we've been playing a lot of Matainai, and we love Arboretum. I'm kind of looking around the room. Tuluva is another big favorite. So I think I tend to stay sort of in the mid strategic weight, but still I tend to go pretty low luck, heavier strategy as well.
I have an oddball assortment, but I always end up playing with my kids. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. What was on your table just before we start talking?
we just finished up a round, actually like a third round of Arcadia Quest, Beyond the Grave.
I've heard that one.
So, yeah, that's hits our table a lot around here. They love the backstabbing.
Yeah, I can see with kids that'd be a great game. Yeah.
All right, in a quick kind of simple description, can you tell us what Soul Last Days of a Star is about and how the backstory is behind the game and what we're trying to accomplish in it?
Yeah, right. So Soul is it's now 1 to 5 players. Basically, the world surrounding this star, they've been living in their own kind of personal utopia, and they've just been living for centuries, drawing energy directly from the sun. And recently, the sun has become sort of critically unstable, and all of the world's, it's basically revealed that the sun is poised to go supernova at any moment, right? So there's a lot of panic and mayhem and distress.
Wailing, gnashing of teeth.
Right. Wailing and gnashing of teeth. And so for most people, this is the end times, but The one small glimmer of hope is that they've each built an ark that houses some small fraction of the population that is trying to escape before the sun explodes. And it turns out in order to escape, the only place to get enough energy is from the dying star itself. So in the game, we're actually going to harvest enough energy from the sun to transmit back to your ark and give it the momentum it needs to escape, hopefully, before the sun goes supernova. So,
but the very act of harvesting that energy further destabilizes it, accelerating the final cataclysm. And so it's a bit of race against time, a little push your luck. Yeah.
I love the whole theme and look of the game. It's actually what drew me into it. And you recently posted that, what do you have it listed as? The mythos pages there where it described the different worlds and the differences between the 5 playable factions, I guess they are.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny that the stories, that sort of mythos, I think has been percolating in both Ryan and Sean's brains for the better part of the game development. Not quite with that specificity, but the idea that they would all be distinct but united in the fact that they are all drawing life from the sun. So it is really actually exciting to see it start to come to life and start to hit the page.
Yeah, and see the backstory kind of come into focus.
Yeah.
Is really interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, I kind of get the feel for that back in the early prototypes when all the pieces were different for everything, and you could see the themes for each of them. Like the green ones were more organic looking and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, and those, it's funny because I think there was sort of a simultaneous development of the notion around their distinct personalities and those pieces that came together. And Ryan actually taught himself Blender, which is the 3D modeling software, to create those, and arguably went a little nuts.
Jodi thought I went too far. She thought the green ones were just ridiculous and too crazy. And I was like, they're the weird plant people. Like,
They were my favorites.
yeah, there you go. See,
that's why I have to learn to.
Thank you, Bill.
And as cool as those different ones are, I do like the fact that everything looks much cleaner now and more professional with the new pieces that you've shown in the Kickstarter.
Well, it turns out it's just way more functional. Like with all those crazy pieces, they were cool and they each had their personality. But then when it came time to actually play the game, there was a lot of confusion about which ones are the energy nodes, and a big part of the gameplay is that you can all use each other's stations, and so you can activate all the energy nodes on the board if you get the sun divers onto them. So it becomes really important to be able to see at a glance what all the energy nodes are, and if they're all just way different, there's this kind of like cognitive load in order, every time you look at the board trying to figure out what's going on.
Discern the different shapes. Yeah.
So it just turned out to be way more direct and make gameplay far more clear to have all the pieces the same.
Well, and I think I'm with you, Bill, a little bit too. I think like the idea of it just looking cleaner and kind of sleek also fit as well.
Yeah.
And now there is talk of keeping the mothership still being different looks. Is that still going to happen? I know it was still in the planning stages.
Yeah, we're working on that right now. Actually, the sculptor is going through. He's just in the sketching phase right now, so we can do some iteration just with sketches to make sure we have the thing that we want. And then once we figure out what we want, he's going to turn them into 3D models for us.
Is it going to be something similar to the older prototype there, along those lines, where they're all kind of thematic to their mythos?
Yeah, the idea is that each one is kind of an expression of the personality of the world. I mean, a big part of the deal with unique motherships is that we also want them to be clearly motherships. So there's this. We need this thread of unity kind of in the design that like we don't want them all to just be completely different things from different universes. There's kind of this design unity that sort of like there's something in common between all of them while still having their own unique personality. So, I imagine this slider of kind of 0 is they're all the same, which is what they are right now, and 10 is like they're completely different things that look like they could have been
from wildly different
come
games.
out of 5 different games.
Right.
So it's like I'm almost thinking somewhere around like 3 or 4, in terms of like giving them each personality but still being mostly the same. So that's an interesting kind of balance in making them unique but also similar. So
yeah, it's a good design challenge, and our sculptor that we're working with is outrageously talented and believes very deeply in the story, not just of our game, but in general as a designer. He almost like demands to know the story so that he can really get his brain around it, which is we respect the heck out of that.
right.
And so
So there's an integrity there
Yeah.
in his approach, which is really inspiring. So
I know this has been kind of a hot button issue with a lot of people in the comments there, where some people absolutely love the fact that everything is the same and symmetrical between everything, and other people like that the motherships are going to be different. Is there any chance that either as an add-on later on, something they can buy, or maybe something in the box itself, is there a way that they could get both the ones that look the same and the unique ones?
I mean, honestly, probably not. Like, this has been a crazy part about the Kickstarter. It's like, anything we do, there's people who love it, and then there's people who hate it. It's
Yeah.
like we have every time we make improvements, and this hasn't even just been with the Kickstarter. It's been all along the way. Like early on, we had this rule where you could just like deconvert a station, leave your sun divers on the board, and someone, I had a friend who just loved this rule. He's like, it made the game for him. And then we found some problems with the rule, and there were some issues, and it made everything really transitory. And then so we had to take it out, and he was been bummed out about it ever since. Even though actually it makes the game better. Like all along the process, it has been everything is a trade-off. Like
Yep.
everything we add is also in a way taking something away, and so it's like I think this mothership example is kind of a perfect indication of that. It's like we
want to make everyone happy, and at the same time,
there's making everybody happy, and there's also adhering to kind of like the original vision of the thing. I think like one of the first things we ever did was make all of the motherships unique, and we loved it, and everybody else loved it, and then we went away from it, and we went back, and we went away from it. It's gone through all these cycles, but I've always enjoyed the idea that the motherships are different. So when we had that stretch goal, like I wasn't even sure we were going to make it, but when we made it, I was really excited about it. And then there were people who were like, "Oh, but I like them all the same." It's really just a crazy process. Like, and I think if it doesn't work out, like we're going to try it and we're going to see it. And if there's this huge outcry against it, and everybody's like, you're ruining everything, like we'll definitely, reflect on that and consider it.
But also, and I like to weigh in as the voice of ultimate reason, and it comes down to finances as well. Like,
Well, yeah, production cost is
right. Like, I'm just gonna cut right to that. Like the cost for a mold to get a second set of motherships, and then honestly, the logistics of everything fitting in the box, if there's any change to weight, all of that has this huge cascading effect.
Yep.
That we just don't want to, honestly, we don't want to mess around. We want to make sure we deliver the most awesome game that we have promised to our backers and get it right. And the idea, like what you're suggesting, Bill, like, is there a chance in the future? Well, who knows? I mean,
we could.
Yeah, we don't know yet, but we'll see how that plays out.
After it catches on and becomes the most favorited game of all time.
Right.
Right. With the 50th anniversary printing of Soul.
Well, I know people love to buy little add-on packs to deluxe out their games, so those little ship pack later on, I'm sure would sell.
Yeah, and that's just the kind of thing we hope to like. We really believe strongly in fostering the community that we have so far, and really looking forward to that growing. And man, I would love it if that was the kind of thing that caught on in the BGG forums, and there was like real demand for it, and we could acknowledge that and go with it. That'd be super cool.
So you hear that if you're interested in that, you got to make a fuss on BGG.
You heard it here first. I'll regret that later.
So I kind of got off on the mothership thing. So get back to what I'm way off my list here. So, um, how did Elephant Laboratories and Soul come to be? I mean, what got you started in the whole idea of creating it?
Well, I mean, me and my brother grew up playing games our whole lives, and our dad was an old war gamer and brought us up on games of every variety and type, and me and my brother just made things up our whole lives, So there was already that context for it. Specifically, this. Jodi and I were wandering around in the woods one sunny day, and I was just talking, just dreaming about stuff, and I'd said I always want to make a board game, because we played board games all the time, and I always loved it, and and also just like wanting to do something with my brother. We'd grown up making things together, and then adulthood hit, and we went and did other things, but I always had this strong connection that was rooted in creativity. So we talked about it, and I said, I've always wanted to make a game where the board is the sun, and Jodi was really supportive of that. She was like, "Go talk to your brother," and I went and talked to Sean, and we just started doing it, and it was crazy. I mean, it was kind of like we didn't even expect it to get to this point. We just, we started in one point and didn't even realize kind of what we were getting ourselves into
at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty early on, actually. Elephant Laboratories, I think, has been a company name that's been in Ryan's head for a long time. Ryan's a notorious namer of things.
Right. And originally it was going to be for like various software projects and like audio generating devices, and
Ryan's an inventor.
and just like lots of other things, like it was going to be my umbrella company for everything that gets invented.
Maybe it still will be.
Yeah, it still can be. Yeah, right. So that was where it started, and I'd actually already registered the name, and then we had the board game, so we're like, well, this is an Elephant Laboratories project. So
yeah.
And we kind of already hinted on it as well too. Is how much has it changed from the original concepts to what we see now? I've already seen the difference in the figures and the artwork on the board and things.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's changed completely. Like, especially because when we first started, we didn't really we'd played a zillion games, but had never designed a game before. So when we started, we had all these ideas, like there'd be this tech tree and research, and we had the planets, and there were going to be different things that we could do on the planets. It was really just like so many ideas, and then we actually sat down to play it, and we just couldn't even play it. It wasn't even a game, and we just had to throw that entire thing away.
Well, I mean, I'll say this though: the concept of it, the board being the sun, has been there from the actual inception of the idea, and the idea of, I think that the basic story of we have to get out.
Right.
That's been there since day one. But it started out that like there were stations around the perimeter of the board, and you had some sort of trek, and you moved around in these different patterns.
And we were going to dive. There was this idea that the sun diver stuck in there. So, but it was going to be more like you go on these exploratory dives where and as you go through the game, you're able to dive deeper and deeper, and you have a certain amount of resources that you're able to stay under longer as you go through, and it was more of an exploration game, which is funny because that didn't really stick around at all.
No,
but the idea that you go deeper, and that the deeper you go, the more things you get, definitely stuck around. Yeah,
but it's been pretty funny, Bill. Like I would say, not even 6 months, 4 months, 5 months into development, we took it to our first con. There's a local convention here called Game Storm, and they're super supportive of new designers. They have a game lab that gets a lot of action. They're wonderful, and with the local design community. So we took it to Game Lab, and at that point, Ryan and Sean said, "Well, the game's about 90% done," and that was 2 years ago. So,
that was actually the next thing I was going to get into, was how long did it take to go from that original idea to what you ended up putting on Kickstarter?
Yeah, 2.5 years.
And I would say, if we had the luxury of working on this full time, it certainly could have been faster. But honestly, the 2.5 years gave us the time to take it to a lot of conventions and get a lot of public play tests in, and really draw from all that feedback.
Yeah, I really like that we took the time. Like we weren't in a hurry. We actually let the thing kind of grow to fullness, in kind of a natural way, which I really enjoyed. Like, and we got it out to as many people as we could. I mean, so many conventions and so many play tests. Like, it's really amazing how much it evolved and how much it refined. So there's a way in which, like, 2 years ago, the one we took to GameStorm, there's still a lot of recognizable parts of it.
I would say actually it probably was 80% done at that point.
Right. But it takes like that much longer to get that last 10, 20%.
Absolutely.
Because you can just keep iterating and refining and balancing and improving it endlessly, really. At some point, you just have to decide
it's ready
to put it out. Yeah.
Well, I like the fact that everything seems so simple. There's three different building types, and then the divers and the base. But then it gets so involved that it makes it really easy to show new players and get them interested in. But it seems like it's going to take a long time for somebody to master what's going to work best in any given situation.
Oh yeah, I'm still discovering stuff about it.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the really delightful pieces for me is, I've probably played Soul a fraction of the number of times that Ryan has, and my number is probably still in the hundreds. And Ryan just like a week ago was like, we saw this happen. We haven't seen it. We haven't seen it happen before. This whole scenario, and it really sort of stress tested this one rule, and it panned out, which was exciting. But that's what you hear, and we knew it going in is you want it to be the game that well, hopefully people want to play 1,000 times, but should someone play it 1,000 times, they don't find one dominant strategy.
Like it's still enjoyable, and there's still Like actually, my favorite game is still Go, which is one of those games that's got the simplest possible rules, but it's just like endlessly deep, and you just like you can spend your entire life and still discover new things about it. Like,
except they're teaching computers to play it now.
Oh yeah, well, it was basically the last game that humans could still win. So,
I do like the fact that the instability effect cards there and the suit tokens really add a lot of variety. So even if you do find a really good strategy, those can completely change it every game depending on what comes up.
Oh yeah,
that's exactly right. And because you can use other people's infrastructure, even if you did use the same set of suit effects, one, you never know how they're going to come up during the course of play, and two, you're also you have to be reactive to a small degree to what the other players are doing as well, and your opportunities might vary depending on their decisions.
There's a lot of interaction in terms of just. And it's funny because it's like that was the other big driving design inspiration. Inspiration was that the interaction would come through mutual benefit rather than mutual detriment. Like it's not a war game. Like you don't just like hammer on someone and attack each other and then destroy each other's stuff. It's like in order to do well, you have to help other people. So it's like there's this constant network of interactions and mutual benefit that's flowing through the game, which really like it's highly dependent on what everybody else is doing. So it's not just there's no dominant strategy. And like you say, the suit effects, like I really love how every game feels different because there's different things you can do and there's different things you can discover, and
including even adding in conflict, right? So the root game has virtually zero conflict and is very, very mutually benefits oriented. But we did at some point discover that a lot of people want to have backstabbing and conflict and battle.
And we were able to add it in, so there's like the attack suit effects.
They're completely optional, but they totally work.
Yeah.
I mean,
those are mostly the red ones, right?
Yeah, the red.
Remember?
Which can be totally screwed up. I mean.
Oh yeah, they're terrible.
If you add in, I mean, even just one of them makes the game kind of contentious, So You play with 2 or 3, and it gets pretty hostile. And then like we played one game where all of them were red, and it was just like
Mayhem.
no one could do anything. It was like the score is like 0-0-3-5, and but it was fun.
Yeah.
So
I prefer the co-op games myself. That kind of, like you were talking about earlier, that kind of working together, being forced to work together, really is another draw for me to the game.
yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and it's interesting. We've definitely witnessed, when you aren't using the conflict cards, when players elect not to use other people's infrastructure because they can't get out of that mindset of
Like they don't want to do anything that helps.
Yeah, they don't want to help anybody. They don't do well. They don't do as well. I mean,
Right.
so it really is baked into the core mechanic that you can. It's really about optimizing. You optimize your play and you take advantage of opportunities, and the other players are going to benefit from it. And so that's where your strategy comes in. How do you balance out who's benefiting at what times because of your actions?
Kind of goes off on a completely different subject, but it fits right in there. As I'm a Magic the Gathering player. It reminds me of I play a lot of Commander, and they have a group deck type there called Group Hug. And it's the same concept where it basically benefits everyone, but you build combos in your deck that make you get more of a benefit out of it than everybody else. But then nobody wants to directly go after you because you're helping everyone.
Yeah, right.
Interesting. That's a nice
funny.
twist.
But it seems very similar, at least in theme there.
Do you find that to be somewhat, I don't want to say divisive, but I imagine that some people just probably can't stand that particular deck and other people love it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people will put it off because usually when you play that format, it's 4 or 5 players at a time, and it's all free for all. So nobody really wants to gang up on the guy who's doing that because he's helping them all. But at some point, they know they have to turn on you.
Interesting.
So, another big hot topic that's been in the comment section and things was about the gold foil that was unlocked as one of the stretch goals.
Yeah, right.
And I know a lot of, and I have my opinions on it too, is the lettering and actual text in the corners, I think, was one of the comments. And foil lettering on a board is terrible on the tabletop because at certain angles, it literally becomes impossible to read.
Yeah, it turned out that we got a lot of feedback on that from people who'd actually experienced it. So it was funny because it was something recommended by the manufacturer. So we were like, this will be cool. And then it turns out, we hadn't actually seen that effect, but there's a lot of people who apparently had witnesses, like with cards that had letters in gold foil or with other boards. And like in certain lighting, it's okay, but other lighting, like they've actually had firsthand frustrating experiences with it, which we haven't. So
I have to say that was probably the most violent outcry in the comments.
yeah.
The one thing I think might work and look cool is on the actual borders between the different rims of the sun, maybe doing those in the gold.
Yeah, so we really, based on all of that awesome feedback and insight from people, we pushed really hard with the manufacturer on, all right, so what does work and what doesn't? And what we found out is gold foil is, it is actually like a stamp that goes on after, right? So it's not printed on. And so it's really difficult to do precision alignment.
Right, so it could be uncentered, which is another reason. Like we wanted to do the rings. That was the idea we had too. The rings between the sun, and then it's
totally, it's a great.
But
idea.
If it was like off center a little bit, it would be really disturbing, kind of.
You drive.
So we're actually kind of like questioning whether we'll even have the gold foil on the board.
Save it for the box.
Exactly right. So it's sort of a trade-off because we had talked originally, and actually that's what the manufacturer was thinking of, was that it would look really cool on the box. So we might end up going that way, but we've sort of put it to our designer to come up with a couple of options for us to see, what would enhance it without detracting any actual usability.
Right.
I do have to say I love the new board design. The old purple one kind of grew on me when I first started following, but the new one with the fiery, more realistic looking sun really caught my eye.
That's always what we wanted. And since the original inspiration for the game was that the board was the sun, and I always had this vision of like a sun that was like literally on fire, and you would touch it and it would actually like hurt you, you know. So this is as close as we can get without actually setting the board on fire.
Yeah, you know, it's been a really good, I would say, dramatic lesson in the value of great art. Because we believe Soul's an awesome game, and it's been super well vetted, and we're very confident about the gameplay. And the truth is, like, when you're doing something like Kickstarter, it also has to look really beautiful. And so it's been a key development for us to get our artwork pushed just far enough for the Kickstarter to attract people like you and a lot of the other backers. It's eye candy first, and then when they dug in, they're like, oh, actually, there's still something here. There's really some substance behind all that.
To kind of go back to, I know we already talked a lot about the actual motherships, but this was actually a question somebody sent to me to ask. So they were curious if there's any thought been put into possibly putting the motherships themselves up on a base to make them raised up and look more important. Part of the concern came from they have such a wide flat bottom on them, and you're constantly moving them along that same track. There was fear that it may wear the board over time. And you guys have had your prototype board for who knows how long, and has that been an issue?
That has not been a problem in terms of moving the mothership around.
Okay.
Yeah. The base thing is cool. I like the idea.
Again, it's added production cost too. So
yeah, it's added production cost, and it's also something we haven't play tested. Like there's a lot of design choices which, there's playtesting mechanics in the game, and then there's also playtesting components.
The actual feel, the board feel,
and sometimes there's things which you'd think are innocuous changes, and it turns out it's like it screws something up. And if we haven't tried it, it hasn't been something that's been like, we've gone through many times. It's sort of something I'm a little hesitant to just introduce without having a bunch of.
That actually brings up a really good point about the entire Kickstarter experience. It's there's a lot of pressure to add things in, especially after we were funded, and to consider. And people have great ideas. Like Bill, you've been a big contributor to some really cool ideas, and I know the backer that you're talking about, who's really keen to do the bases, and
yep.
And people have a bunch of really awesome ideas, and it's a real challenge to say, okay, well, this isn't something we're going to do without really thorough playtesting, or like making sure that the ramifications don't,
upset something unintentional. Because I've just seen so many times where like we make some change, and then there's always unintended consequences.
Oh, I definitely understand. It was something I was asked, so I thought I'd pass it along. I do think they would look cool raised up. It would give them more of an imposing presence, make them look more important. But
the other side of that is that, like, and I've started to do this, is like you can mod your games, so
yeah.
If someone wants to, I know those bases, like you can get a little drill and drill a little hole in the bottom of the mothership and put them on a bit. Like, people can do that. Like, if you want to, you can totally.
In fact, this particular backer, I think, has already he posted a picture or a link to the little hooks and the stands that he's already got. Like, he's pumped. He's so excited. It's awesome.
So I think like drilling a little hole in the bottom of the mothership is actually not too much of a hurdle if you really are.
Yeah, and and I look forward to actually hearing about the usability with that. Because and I'm I'm like, I think reaching around that could be problematic for all the players. But I'm really keen to hear how it actually plays out for them, and I can't wait to see pictures because I know it'll look cool.
I guess it would really depend on the kind of bases too, because like the Firefly ships for that game all come on bases, but they're short, stocky ones, and they're okay. Whereas I used to play Games Workshop games, which I think are the bases that he bought and showed the picture of, which tend to be a lot taller and smaller at the base. So then you run the risk of being top heavy and having them tip over every time somebody bumps something. And
Forbidden Stars has those too. Yeah, I've seen those. But another thing actually that could be an issue with that is that you can tell whose turn it is by how far apart the Sundivers are
on the
Yep.
board.
and I can see that sort of confusing things a little bit, but I don't know. Until we try it, we wouldn't know. That's why
we
have
couldn't
to
just
try.
throw it in. But
Right.
yeah, it's an awesome idea, and that's another one where I love the idea of the community kind of getting behind it and having some like house rules type forum where they're like, this is how we modded ours. What are you guys doing with yours? And see how it
I think
develops.
that's a natural step in any game, though, especially if it gains popularity. You're going to find those threads over on BGG where people have customized and made their own components and changed things and house rules.
Yeah, totally.
Now, sadly, I was a little bit late getting on board with this. I actually didn't even find out about the game until the Kickstarter had launched. So I never got a chance to get a copy to review myself, but I've been watching everybody else's and checking everything out, and definitely going to be posting a review of the final game when it gets to that stage and gets shipped out.
Excellent.
When is the actual projected fulfillment date here? What are you shooting for?
We are shooting for February of 2017, and I've sort of been like owning the production schedule part of it, and just looking at trying to be. It still makes me nervous, and I know it doesn't sound like 8 months out is aggressive by any means, but we wanted to make sure we had a bit of padding. Just knowing that a lot of people are trying to get things shipped out for holiday, and
well, that, and as someone who's followed a lot of these, anytime you start working in miniatures, you have to worry about molds and getting back your test copies to make sure they're okay, and making sure that everything's fine before you go with your production ones.
And so that's where it's like we're definitely gonna. The first priority is making sure everything is high quality and solid as it can possibly be. And the second one is making sure that it's
timely.
Right.
And we're really committed to just keeping everyone very, very actively abreast of our developments. But you're right. I mean, it takes a month from the time we send off like a final schematic for the motherships, for example. It'll take a month for us to get the what do you call it? Not prototype back.
Yeah.
And if there's anything we don't like about it, that starts the process all over again.
Right.
So,
we have been like 3D printing the pieces, though, so we've been able to test them. So it's not just a complete surprise. Like we have been playing a lot with the pieces in their current design. So.
And our artist has a ton of experience working in plastics and 3D molds, so he's pretty savvy. In fact, we had a pre-production meeting with him and the manufacturer, and he was very clearly on top of all of that, which was heartening. Not that there can never be surprises, but it was really good to hear him talking the lingo and understanding the file setups for optimal production and all that.
Nice.
Yeah.
And one other major thing that I mentioned to every single person I ever talked to who's making a game, please make your cards standard sized. All the people out there, so many people like to sleeve their cards nowadays, and I hate when I get cards that are oddball sizes and it takes months to track down sleeves that'll fit.
Yeah, we were thinking on just adding a ½ inch on each side. Do you think that's a problem?
I actually just got a game a week or two ago that was supposed to have Euro-sized cards and Euro mini-sized cards, and the mini ones are like 2 millimeters too big. And
Right.
it took months for anyone to find a sleeve that would fit them. So
we are absolutely going with standard sizing. No worries there.
okay, that's a huge one for a lot of people too. People
Right.
love to sleeve their cards.
Rest assured, this house is no stranger to sleeves, and you are speaking not with me, but an avid sleever.
I maybe have too many sleeves.
Yeah,
I penny sleeve things if I have to, but
whoa.
I'm Dragon Shield all the way.
oh, me too. I love Dragon Shield. I like the Ultra Pro as long as you can find the ones that don't have the stupid little medallion thing on the bottom that makes the deck sideways.
What are they doing?
It's worse when like I said, I'm a Magic player. We play Commander, which is a 100-card deck. You get a brand new 100 cards in those things, and the deck sits at such an angle it tips over all the time. Drives me nuts. So, but yeah, like I said, so for some of my board games, I've gone with penny sleeves just so I could get some that actually fit, just so there was something on there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah. So how are things looking so far on hitting that February goal? I know there's always unexpected delays, but
Well, Bill, we're 2 weeks out, so far it's looking good. So far we're looking solid.
Yeah, it's actually right now everything is feeling really good, and we're just gonna knock on a little wood. And
so you're right where you want to be for now, anyway.
right now we're right on track.
Yeah,
That's
and
good.
like we said, we committed to putting out an update every other Sunday. So
Until files go off to the manufacturer.
yeah, we'll be letting everybody know. I mean, I'm even gonna continue just to, even if I have nothing to say, I'm just gonna send out an update and be like, hey.
You'd be amazed how much people actually enjoy that, just hearing from you guys.
Yeah, right.
So many of the big companies, once the Kickstarter's over, if you're lucky to hear from them like once a month or once every other month, they just don't seem to care. So even if you just stop in and say, hi, everything's going on schedule, it goes a long ways.
Right.
I think
Like, hi, I went to the park.
here's a picture of us riding bikes. No, I think that was actually a really significant learning from the Kickstarter experience. Even though we had read a ton about it, and many people had advised us and told us what to expect, it was still surprising just how important and meaningful it is to stay in very close personal contact with the backers during the process, which we really enjoy anyway. But it was really clear that it made a difference and that people really appreciate it.
That was actually on here. I was going to ask you guys how the Kickstarter campaign went for you and what kind of things did you learn from it, and if you were happy about the outcome. Obviously, you are to some extent.
Oh my gosh. For me it blew my mind.
Yeah, running a Kickstarter is a form of insanity. I've decided.
It is that. And to answer your final question there, yeah, we were beyond thrilled with how it turned out.
No, I mean, it had to take a while just even to recover it. And even now I'm kind of like, hey, everybody, where is everybody?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, it was like such an emotional roller coaster. And then to just be like over, I'm like, hey, okay.
Yeah, but it exceeded, like I said, I think it was, neither Ryan nor I would have said this out loud, but going into it, we were both kind of like, well, gee, I don't know, will we even get funded? I mean, we felt like we were asking for, and I think we were. It was a very healthy amount we were asking for.
Yeah, we asked for a lot more than a lot of Kickstarters. I was like, that's a lot of money to, yeah.
And
it was a high goal.
So it was actually breathtaking to see it kind of take off and to see how well it did. But as far as like things we learned, what would you say you learned, Ryan?
I learned there's a lot of awesome people out there. I don't know where everybody came from, but thank you. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, in terms of just what a full onslaught it is, before everyone always says it's like a full-time job, and then until you get in there, there's no way to explain to someone what it's like and how intense it is.
Yeah, and that goes to the never launch until you're ready. And
take your time.
We postponed twice.
Yeah,
once very publicly and once privately, but and I can't even imagine if we had gone into it any sooner.
Really, like, get everything ready and everything together and take your time and go, and
then do 3 more months of work.
And then take 3 more months and work on your Kickstarter page. I worked on that Kickstarter page for 3 months.
Yeah.
And it wasn't ready until we launched. Like, it just wasn't even ready.
No.
I have seen a few people launch before they were ready and unfortunately got very poor backer turnouts and ended up either canceling altogether or having to reschedule later. And one of them actually did a really good job revamping and redoing everything and was massively successful the second time. So, but it definitely makes a difference getting everything ready ahead of time.
It does, and I think the number one thing the number one thing I'm most proud of is that the game is really good, and
right. It kind of sells itself at that point.
Yeah, that more than anything, you have to have that. I feel like, obviously you don't have to have a good game to succeed necessarily out there. There's lots of dogs, but for us, I think it was like a critical backbone. It was like, if nothing else, we know we've made a really awesome game, and then on top of that, we got as much exposure as we could possibly do beforehand, and then just yeah, a ton of work goes into preparing, and being ready for the public eye. Man, I think that was one of my biggest lessons was there are people who really, really are going to dig into why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? And you have to be prepared to answer thoughtfully and diplomatically. And
I'll admit I'm one of those people. I love going through rule books and going, well, why is this way?
yeah, totally. You are not alone, Bill. You are not alone.
Well, see, I end up teaching these games to a lot of people when I pick them up, and I either play them at a play group down at the store or with my friends and family at home. And so I'm the one who has to explain this stuff. And that's the questions they always ask me. Well, why? And I like to know why, so I can tell them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ryan is also the guy in the group who teaches the games. And I think that helped a lot in the development of the rulebook, actually. That and a lot of amazing feedback and guidance from some very trusted resources, good friends of ours. But yeah, understanding that somebody has to open this box while we're not with them and read it and understand it and be able to teach it is a very difficult lens to look through as the developer of the game.
That was a big thing with a recent Kickstarter I got. Their rulebook was written in a way that it looked like whoever their playtesters were had been taught how to play it by the designer. So whenever they had a question, he was right there and said, well, this is why you do that. And none of it was actually in the book.
That's like notoriously common, yeah.
Yeah, so
That's
I really did like your how to play video that you did there too. I think it was Jodi in that one, most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
That one caught my eye. I actually was really entertained by it.
Oh,
Jodi's pretty entertaining. It's
yeah.
true.
Oh,
Well, it was a cross between the way you explained the rules, but you guys also went through everything and why everything was being done the way it was, and it was a really good explanation right from the get-go on that.
Thank you. That's really born out of doing a bajillion demos in public.
Yeah, we just did the thing that we do in demos for the camera.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's one thing that in being really active on a lot of the communities on like Facebook and all that, and people seeking advice. That's one of my number one things is get it in front of strangers as much as possible, and for a lot of reasons, obviously, but that's one of them to get really polished and really clear on how do you even talk about your game.
Yeah, it evolved a lot. The explanation.
Yep.
Kind of. Actually, we didn't really go into that at all, but I've heard, I think from you guys personally on the comment section, that there's a possibility of there being a trilogy of interconnected games. So what kind of plans do you guys have for the future, either expansions or the other games?
Well, yeah, right. Well, my brother and I are already working on the sequel, which is once you've escaped, now you're on a generation ship. And what's it like, on the generation ship, flying through space, looking for a new home, all the things you'd have to go through, the kind of trials and tribulations of seeking out a new home and even just surviving on the generation ship. So that's the second one. And then the third one is actually once you find a system, then
An inhabitable system that can sustain.
Right. The board will actually be like a solar system with different planets in orbit, each game, and it'll be like developing a colony, a sort of like viable solar community.
Right, and that's the most. I mean, not to be too punny. That's the most nebulous concept so far, but.
Yeah.
And those ones have to be single player games too, right? Since only one person escapes.
Your whole arc escapes. Don't forget, it's a small.
It was a joke.
Right. So the generation ship kind of breaks into factions over time, right? The politics of interstellar travel.
Right. As we all know from far too much sci-fi. No, but what I think is really cool is the guys are envisioning these as distinctly different games. They won't have all the same mechanic. Obviously it won't be the same board. So it's part of the same story, but they will have different gameplay, and that's what I'm super excited to see how that takes shape.
It'll be set in the same universe too, so a lot of your mythos will be able to apply over.
Exactly right.
And our favorite part is in the third one, you're actually part of the game will be rebuilding the solar harvesting infrastructure in the new star.
Oh, really?
Which then further triggers the solar instability,
no.
and then
we don't learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, right. And then you can just play the first game over again.
I like it.
Where do we begin?
Yeah, just so you can just keep going forever.
But definitely cool to see that you guys are looking ahead. You already have some stuff planned out. I'm sure it's a ways away. You said over 2 years on this one, so.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, it's and Ryan and Sean have looked at some just random other designs that they've been working on, and Ryan has a couple on his own. And
yeah, we have like 4 other designs, which are, and I feel like they're almost kind of like therapy designs because Soul was such an intense effort. So like we did one really just silly game, and then we did a lighter kind of social game, and then we did an abstract game, but they've all been a lot simpler.
Yeah.
Than Soul. So it's like with the sequel, we're going back into making a more ambitious project. So
you have other projects in the works or planned for Elephant Labs as a whole? I mean, outside of the Soul.
Yeah, right, exactly.
For sure, and it's a big question right now as far as how much time and energy do those projects get? When, if ever, do they make a real public appearance? They've been play tested publicly, but I think it's interesting. Like Ryan said, it's almost been like therapy or like game design exercise for them to come up with those, and also get a little bit of a break from the heaviness of developing. I mean, for a first game, Soul's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Well, as a first game, looking at it from a fan's point of view, it's a huge start to a company. I think you already built a decent fan base, so you're going to look at anything you guys put out. So
that's awesome.
Cool,
thank you.
yeah.
That's really nice to hear.
Between now and when the game comes out in February, there's a bunch of big conventions. Do you guys have any? Are you looking at attending like Gen Con or any of those this year? I know you did before. We kind of talked about it off air before the show.
We will not be at Gen Con. We will be at BGG Con. And we're also going to be at Sasquatch, which is a kind of smaller convention up in Bellevue, Washington.
Right.
And that might be all of our plans.
Unfortunately, I think given the reality of our situation, we're more likely to start hitting some of the cons after we have the game in hand, and I know we had talked a little bit earlier about some of the things you learned during the course of the Kickstarter. One of the big things was we weren't totally prepared to answer the question about what are we doing for retail if since we actually funded and did quite well.
That was where I was going next, actually.
Yeah. So that's something we're still investigating. There's a lot of very important factors before you make any commitments around that. We're probably, I don't want to say overly cautious, but I'm very cautious about not making any promises that we aren't going to be able to fulfill. So we have to look really closely at what the budget we have right now actually can afford us as far as reinvesting back into production, and then I think once we know that, if we know how much of an overrun we can make and really what kind of sales channels we want to look at and what feels right for us, then we'll start talking about, okay, well, what kind of presence do we want to have on the convention circuit next year? Because for me, and I think Ryan too, it feels more exciting to be able to go and say, all right, well, here's our game now, right? Like we did 2 years of pretty heavy touring with the prototype, and now we're pretty keen to get out there with the actual game.
And then have a pile of them right there, and you'd be like, "You really like playing it with us? There it is."
Yeah, I was joking with someone just today about that, like the daunting specter of having 2,000 games in your basement. And so I'm hoping whatever pile that is behind us at those conventions is not.
We'll just open them all and play the biggest game of Soul ever.
Now I know it's a ways off, but you guys, are you going through any kind of fulfillment company or shipping company? Are you actually going to be hand packing and shipping all of these
Oh
games
my
to the
goodness.
backers?
No way are we doing that ourselves. We
I've
actually,
seen people do that.
for sure, and that's where a lot of research pays off. We read enough to know that that is not something, and also, quite frankly, like we've talked about, we're small, and we are not a self-sustained board game production company just yet. So we have other jobs, and the idea of doing that on our own was just, it seemed like a potential nightmare for us and for our backers, who want to actually get the game sometime in the year 2017.
We did get a
So,
huge number of backers for our first time project too.
yeah, absolutely. I think I would have been crying if we had said we were going to do it ourselves. So yeah, we are working through. The current plan right now is we're working with Ship Naked to do fulfillment. They also do storage for us, which is excellent. And we've got a whole, we've got oh geez, I'm fumbling. We've got it sorted out with freightage to get it from.
Yeah, so they do factory to depot, and they have depots all over the world,
And so depot to door.
and they have warehouse, and they each even have like deals with various distributors. So like they have some connections there. So they're kind of like, there are so many parts of the spectrum of what it would take to actually get the game out to people. They take care of. So we're just.
I think that's one aspect a lot of backers don't tend to think about too, and for the publishers you do, is when you talk about shipping, people see shipping costs on a lot of Kickstarters and it kind of get upset about it or whatnot. And shipping isn't just like when you buy something off Amazon and they ship it to your house.
Hmm.
Shipping for a board game and such from Kickstarter, you have to pay for the shipping from the manufacturing plant to wherever the production's going, where they're putting it all in the box. You have the models coming from one company usually, in the board game, or the board parts and cards coming from a different company, and then everything's got to be put together. Then it has to be sent out to the backers. So there's a
Exactly.
lot more to it.
Man, it's so nice to hear you say that, Bill, because that's it is woefully misunderstood, I think, by the vast majority of backers. And I mean, and how could you know it unless you had gone through the process yourself or, read extensively about it? But it is, there's, the idea of getting something from China and, yeah, assembled possibly from various different locations and then shipped to various depots around the world and then delivered to someone's doors you're talking about, like, 3 to 4 different vendors involved in that entire process. There's importing taxes, there's handling fees, there's all.
Customs.
Exactly right. And then we made a heavy game.
The game is heavy.
The game is heavy. And so, yeah, a lot of people really have a hard time with the shipping, and it's another big decision with Kickstarter is you have to decide if you're going to try and hide some of that cost, and do the sort of like free shipping to the US, which everyone knows there's no such thing as free shipping,
Yep.
but people like to see that. And so it was a big decision for us to decide to be totally transparent and go kind of bare bones, like no profit margin on the game itself, and just bald-faced, here's what it costs to ship things around the world.
Luckily, everyone was super understanding.
Jeez.
You always get the handful of Europeans who, because it doesn't matter what game it is, there's always some over there because of their taxes and duties or whatever it is they have to pay on them. And I feel bad for them, but it happens.
No, and I think one of the most heartening bits of our experience was that, yeah, there was a lot of actual kind of blowback about the international shipping. Turns out huge gaming community in Australia, and it's one of the most expensive places to get to. But what we found is that by, again, having a really personal connection and reaching out directly and answering people as thoroughly and thoughtfully and honestly as possible, a lot of people ended up being really understanding and very cool. Even if they couldn't still afford to do it, we got a lot of really positive feedback through that experience around people saying like, you know what, we understand, and that's tough, and what a bummer. But it was actually ended up being, from what started out being a little intimidating and kind of unnerving, ended up being a really positive community experience.
Yeah. I mean, some people are still angry, but for the most part,
you can't please everyone.
yeah.
Exactly right. I mean, there are people in the U.S. who are unhappy about the pricing. So what are you going to do?
And then you already kind of hinted at this one, but the whole retail thing and whatnot. But I know they have to print. Usually, when you print up these games, they have to be done in certain batches all at a time. So undoubtedly, you're going to have at least a few extras that you're going to have with you, either whether you go to cons or whatnot. So there is a possibility that at least some people may be able to get it if they missed out on the Kickstarter.
Yeah, we're taking pre-orders, and we'll probably be able to fulfill some of them. You know, we'll have some extras.
Yeah, I want to be cautious about saying that. We aren't actively taking pre-orders. What we are doing right now is collecting emails for people who are interested. Okay. And once we have a solution sorted out, then we'll be contacting those people.
Yeah, I guess it's not a pre-order. Pre-orders you actually like pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, never mind.
We are not doing
people are giving us their email, and we're making a list of the people who want the game.
But yeah, Bill, I think given the success of the funding, as soon as we've sorted out the actual costs for all the shipping that we've committed to with our backers, once we know the overrun, there's a very good chance that there will be at least a small retail supply. Right. And we will be as vocal as possible when we have that sorted out, and to get it out to people who did miss the Kickstarter.
And anybody who's looking to get more information about Soul Last Days of a Star and Elephant Labs, where should they head?
Well, the BGG page is probably the best spot.
Yep. Direct message us.
The Facebook page. Right. It's pretty active.
Elephant Labs Games is another great place to go. And then, of course, our website.
Yeah, just elephantlaboratories.com/soul.
Right. And we do have you can sign up for our newsletter there. But really the most active news and updates are going to be on the Kickstarter page, on the BGG page, and on Facebook.
Yep.
I
was going to say the Kickstarter page, of course, has the comments and as well as the updates on there for everybody.
And the FAQs are actually they're pretty robust, and they're pretty helpful for people just discovering the game. I encourage you to check out the FAQs, because I also listed out a lot of the reviews and the news coverage, and so there's a lot of resources in there.
Awesome. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this. I've kept you guys long enough, and
it's been nice talking with you.
Is there anything else you want to say out there to our listeners, your backers, or anybody who missed out on the Kickstarter and is just checking it out just to find out about the game here?
We love you guys.
It's true, we do. One, I feel like we don't get to say this often enough, but I want to say thank you to everyone who helped us get to the moment of Kickstarter. We had just outrageous support and help from very talented and generous friends of ours in creating everything about the Kickstarter campaign, and everyone who helped us play test and gave us feedback leading up to it. It was.
Yeah, we did not do it alone.
No, it was a huge community effort long before it got to Kickstarter. And then, oh my gosh, the Kickstarter community is just incredible, just mind-blowing. Thank you so much to everyone who backed.
That sounded kind of like an Academy Awards.
I know, I've been practicing that my whole life.
Good, yeah. Like Jodi's holding a golden statue here at the same time.
I am wearing a gown as well.
Just for those of the team who weren't present here, we have Jodi and Ryan who are here. There's your brother Sean. There's Mark Dusk, who I think was an artist.
Art director, yeah.
And John, I'm going to butcher his last name, so I'm not even going to try.
John
Meatling, a.k.a. Portal Dragon, who is our sculptor and seeing the rest of the design through.
Just wanted to get everybody's credit out there since they weren't here today.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, that's it for this one. Check out Soul Last Days of a Star. Check out Elephant Labs and show these guys how much you want to thank them for developing such a great game.
Thanks so much, Bill. This has been great.
Thank you.
That's about wraps it up for another episode of Game On. Coming up in the next episode or two, we're going to have a couple local game designers. Dan Hundings. I apologize if I mispronounce his name. I have no idea how to say it. He's from DPH Games. They did Flip the Bird, Cats, Psychological Warfare, Cash Me If You Can, and some others. He's got a new game coming out called Legacy at Sea. It's a pirate game I've talked about in some blog posts, and we're going to have him on here hopefully soon, along with a review of Legacy at Sea. Also, Ed Bond from Dream Games, which we talked about at the beginning of the show, designer of Meta Checkers. Going to try to get him on here at some point as well. Anyway, thanks for joining us for this episode of Game On. As always, feel free to contact me with any questions, comments, or suggestions. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can reach me by email at trueflight_EQ2@yahoo.com. Also, I'm currently in the market looking for a new co-host to permanently co-host a show with me. If you're interested in that, contact me and I can get you on here as a guest for an episode. We'll see how things work out and go from there. And we'll see you in a few weeks with the next episode. Until then, have fun and game on.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.